Nice.
Still says starting. Still says starting.
Nice.
Well, I tried.
I really hope it just starts with a Christmas.
Link to
First
AMA.
question, where's Chris?
Link to AMA live
You're
stream.
not live.
Is it?
Yay. Congratulations,
Hello.
we did it.
Well,
Well,
can one of us send a link to the Discord?
I think Jackie said she was going to do that.
Wow.
Oh.
Hannah sent me a picture of us all talking already.
Nice.
Great, so we're going.
So some people, we are going in some areas, or we did earlier.
Hope No Claritas is live now.
Yep,
Perfect.
yeah. Yeah, chill. Yeah.
You should get on the live stream and then hold it up to the mic.
No one.
But it won't
does
actually
that.
do it because of the latency.
I hate that.
Yeah.
I really do.
It's not that.
Miguel, you're genius.
You are.
So we just have to say something for 20 seconds, then put it up, and then we can walk away.
True.
It'll just go ad nauseam.
Alright, guys, you want to do your introduction?
Other people?
Who's in?
Are we
Yes,
Third people?
we're all set.
Nice.
Wow.
Great.
Great.
Welcome, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
Punctual. Wow. That never happens at once.
Either.
Not at Claritas anyway. Oh my gosh.
Perfect. All right, Cole, do you want to start us off?
Right. Greetings. I'm Coleman Taylor.
Hi, I'm Chase Harvey.
Hi, I'm Keenan Caps.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Edwards.
Hi, I'm Chris Opperman.
And I'm Keller White. We are doing this AMA, so I hope you guys all have some questions prepared. This isn't Ask Me Anything. If this is your first one, the idea is you ask us anything. So aside from spoilers, of course, so please do stay away from any super lore-specific stuff. If you have a question you'd like to ask, simply type it in the chat, and one of our lovely assistants over here will take note of it. So if you've asked a question and you haven't quite heard a response yet, spamming is not going to help. Just wait we're going to handle them in order. So with that said, we're ready to start taking some questions. So we're going to vibe on the couch while you guys figure out what you want to ask.
Yeah.
We need some
Vibe.
I'm just gonna be shunned.
Oh, I need some music.
I know, you
please
don't
no.
That'd be a horrible idea. Please don't.
Now you can drink.
Now you can drink your heat beer and have the
This is funny. One color was talking about it. I was just like,
Aha.
we're starting off clutch.
It was starting off great.
My
So,
greatest apologies.
while we wait for a question to come in through the chat, we're going to go ahead and ask, what is your your
And my face is here.
I know. I was about to say first, your favorite thing about GMing?
So, favorite thing about GMing is progress of a character. Like when people make a character, they have a concept, and watching that progress and slowly change over time, and seeing how they interact with the world is sick. I love it. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah, I'd probably say that my favorite part of GMing in general is seeing like those really, really big times where you get a bunch of people that have to work like cooperatively towards something, and then they like almost don't get it, but then they succeed, and it's like you can tell the people are like mentally, physically exhausted, but like there's that sense of accomplishment. Like I just absolutely adore that.
I'm relatively new, but as the past 7 months have shown me as a GM that I have personally enjoyed so far, is I really like when players are really in their character. Kind of going along with that, what you were saying, whenever they're in their character and they're in the moment and they're role-playing and they can see the world that they've created, that's probably my favorite part, is seeing that in their eyes, of like, oh, I'm here, I'm playing, and I am my character.
And agreed, I'm also new to it, and so I'm kind of going off what you are also saying. I love seeing the players really just be involved or get engaged in the world. Also kind of like coming up with like new ideas and seeing like how the players are going to be involved and like bounce around with like what you've come up with.
Mine probably the same as pretty much any fantasy aspect for me, which is just there are so many things that we will never get to experience in real life, and I enjoy getting to force that to happen here. Yeah, basically.
That's really fair. Yeah. I like when a player surprises me. Something where I have 1 to 3 to 6 intended solutions, and then somehow they find a 7th or 8th. I love having to learn how to code GM a quest with the players as they are coming up with unique situations and ideas. That kind of interactivity is something that you only really get in a LARP or D&D style setting, but with LARP, with the physical interactivity of it, it takes it even a step further. So that's definitely one of my favorite things.
Thank you for your wonderful and insightful answers. Moving on to the next question we've gotten from the chat. It is, what is the farthest from the intended plot the players have ever gotten?
One thing comes to mind. So some of you were familiar with some certain powerful vampiress that was in a manor, and we had a lot of ideas of how that encounter was going to start. And one of the ways that we did not envision was walking up and knocking on the door in both the junior and the senior. So that was kind of one of those magical, instances where the players somehow kinetically, psychically, like, linked up and then both chose the wrong answer, and it was very delightful.
That was not one of your 6 outcomes. Knocking on the door. That didn't go through your head. I'm like, oh, maybe.
No, maybe they'll just walk up and get themselves killed. I didn't expect that one.
Well, dang.
Did you have something?
I did, but as soon as we said that, I went blank.
I have an
I have
associated
several, that's what I'm like.
one. It's kind of tied along with what you're saying with that, like, this isn't, I guess, directly an answer to this question, but it sparked this, and I'm going to say it because, you know. So this reminds me of a particular time where there was something that happened in both a junior and a senior event, and it almost freaked me out because of how paralleled they were.
Yeah.
And we had, in both the junior and the senior event, specifically a Minotaur noble in the same spot get eaten with the intention of trying to get abilities back. In the same spot with no, like, correlation at all. And I remember watching it happen and being like, what is happening right now?
It was very Twilight Zone.
Yes.
Same kin, same class, same quest, same encounter. Both of them died, and both of them got used for food to try to restore abilities. Unreal.
It was unlike anything that we've seen. Like, I've seen as a player of, like, what? And then hearing you guys say, oh, it happened to the juniors too. I was like, what? But
Oh, man.
I have one. I answer this now. When we would be doing a main event and we're doing a heavy main, like the stories, and like the stories rising, and players are like, "This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing," and then immediately we're gonna go to the wasteland. Every time. That's like every time that goes the furthest off the plot. You're just like, the world's ending. We gotta go to the wasteland.
I think
Jeez.
last event, no, sorry. It's like the last 7 events they've gone to the wastes. Like, it is insane. It's like, oh, every time.
It's a cool place. I get that. Oh, it's a really hot place, but
I get it. Well, except at night. Anybody else have any answers for that question?
March on Vlad.
March on Vlad.
March on Vlad.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's
My
true.
favorite one.
Yeah. There was a very obvious. Wow, something about super powerful vampire people and being like, let's just go right up to it. I don't know how that is something in the collective zeitgeist of the.
Because we want to conquer the
Adventures.
villains.
I guess.
My favorite is just
their
like,
friend.
we're gonna poke it with a stick. Like, oh, everyone's with Steve Irwin here.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Chief, it's angry, and then running away immediately after.
It's like the Indiana Jones thing.
Okay, so moving on from that question, we have another great question from Aiden McLaughlin, and sorry if we haven't attributed questions, we'll try to as we can. But the question is, do you guys ever plan to add a new class or new factions?
It's a great question.
The question is, do you guys ever plan to add a new class or faction? You've caught us red-handed. No.
The answer is yes.
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Spicy.
All right, to not push the issue a little longer, we're going to move on. So, how much of an event is improving, and how much of it is planned?
I can take this one if you want off the bat.
Sure.
Can I start with that one? All right, cool. So here's the thing. We do a lot of planning.
So much.
A lot of planning. And there's an amount of planning that you can do, and like Keller mentioned earlier, sometimes the players just do their own thing. And so there's so much of an amount of like, hey, I'm going to build a structure for this world and for these characters so that, for the most part, no matter what happens, I can know how the character or the world is going to respond appropriately. So that's kind of how you have to design it. But within the nature of how that works, you have to have some improvisation, because we can guess at what you guys are going to do, but we don't really know exactly what you guys are going to do in every situation. So of course we have to improv a bit. And then every once in a while, everybody just wants to go to the wastes, and so you gotta improv that a little bit. So to answer the question, there's kind of a lot of both, but a lot of the planning actually goes into the environment and the characters as opposed to the exact interactions, because a lot of that changes based on what you guys do.
To tag along with that, I mean, a lot of it is actually, it's awkward, like what you were just saying. It is actually already pre-planned. Like anything and everything you guys do is pre-planned. The part that's kind of more improv is when it happens, because there's things that's always going and it's constantly evolving, but it's just like you guys activate different sections at will.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
There's things in the game that are there, and it's up to the players to go and find and activate that thing. And so, it's planned yet improvised on how it gets there.
Yeah, I would say basically everything at an event is planned to some extent. Sometimes we will improvisationally have to then pre-plan a quest or a trip to the wastes again. So Coleman's gotten pretty good at that. But I would say that there are certain things that we have to improvise, but even when we're improvising, we're making sure that we're trying our best to keep people going and doing stuff in town while we plan that out. So that way it's not some sloppy thing that was just thrown together in the last second, but actually take the time to get the NPCs and the plan in place so that whatever is gone on is good.
Cool. So, moving on to our next question. The players really want to know, with the website being a thing and all these... Sorry, with the website being a thing, are updates going to be bigger, fewer, and farther between?
Website guy?
That's an interesting question. I do not anticipate there being much of a difference. Some of you that have been keeping particular track of our update schedule will know that there isn't really an update schedule. So with that in mind, I would say it's probably going to be just as sporadic as ever. It's mostly going to depend on having enough related changes to release at once. That's usually, generally speaking, what we try to do is if we have some random one-off change for an ability, we're probably not going to just throw that out by itself. But if we have a decent number of changes, which we're starting to get a few, so we might have one soon. We'll see. So I don't think there will probably be any change in that regard due to the website.
I mean, I could say that updating we're constantly adding more to our world, so that's for sure going to be a thing.
Ever changing game.
All right, so now it's time for some trivia. So players would like to know, what year is it in Claritas?
I got this one. It is 1394 AC.
Can you repeat that louder?
Yeah.
You can rewind if you need to.
Yeah, figured out. They've tried.
All right. So the next question, we're from Lane Mitchell. We have, do you plan on releasing a list of gods and pantheons?
Do you plan on releasing a list of gods and pantheons?
That's a tricky question.
Yeah.
Because technically we have. So, I mean,
I would say in our world there is enough sporadic of whatever is considered religion a lot of times for different kin or different people groups that it doesn't make as much sense to release a list of here are the ones, because they vary a lot. Some kin will see something as a god, some will recognize that same thing as something else, some will just realize it as very powerful but maybe not deific, and so it's not black and white enough to really have just a set list.
Mm-hmm.
I would say there's enough clashing cultures that releasing a unified Greek pantheon isn't really going to correlate to our game necessarily. There will be individual mentions and things of the various deities and things on individual kin things, but that's going to be to individual use case most likely.
Great. So, a question from Ada McLaughlin. What has been your favorite moment from an event? As a GM, of course, not as a player.
Okay, I'll start this one. There's one that sticks out and has a special place in my heart. There's an event we had a long, long time ago. It was the Blood Moon event, where the moon stopped in the sky and became red, and it was night for a very, very long time. And I had a little type of lotus flower that fed on moonlight rather than sunlight. And in this specific situation, because the moon was out forever, it got overfed, and they would kind of instead of just do their normal, which was just waving back and forth, they would actually break off from the stem and kind of float away. So it was a unique little flower that some botanists might have cared about that only could have really happened in that unique situation. So there was the random event of just a small lotus flower kind of floating through the air. and I got one beautiful moment of half the people were on a quest, half the people were just kind of sitting around the fire. So I described one of these things, and it turned out pretty much everyone was like, "Ooh, let's just follow the flower." And so they just got up and followed it into the woods, and then poor Coleman came by like 5 minutes after that, like, I'm gonna run a quest, and there was, one person left?
They literally got out of the bathroom. He's like, they all left me.
It's like, they followed a flower, I don't know, and this, whole group of 6 or 7 adventurers, just no weapons, nothing, just wandered into the woods during this time where vampires were about, because it had been night for, 4 days, like, I'm gonna follow the flower. It was delightful. It made me very happy.
It's also one of those things that it wasn't planned, but it just happened.
It
And
was
you're like,
so
well,
You could say that was like kind of the answer to the question earlier that derailed
yeah.
the event a little bit.
You said you.
I did. That was mine.
Yeah.
I was like,
That's great.
I have one. I actually kind of not off that one, but sounded some. Wow, I speak pretty. The answer is when we had the zombie plague and the werewolf plague
This is
in
old.
town. Both of my favorite things. I'm gonna go with the zombie one though, because that's my favorite one. But just I can't remember what happened, but one of our players got bit, and during that time, just went around secretly biting other players, and they slowly became zombies, and then we had zombies in town. We got overrun. All the players were zombies, and there were zombie NPCs in town. And I remember going, okay, all the players are dead. This is not good. And then they're like, one player's not dead, and Sophia Walla walks out of the porta potty, and she sees all the players. And I remember her going, nope, and closes it. And I was like, all right, that's probably one of my favorite moments, is just realizing how quick the town turned.
Yes.
oh.
The solution to this problem was we had one of our adventurers end up going to the clerics and just getting a literal bucket of cure and start going around it and administering it. So
It was so funny.
gosh, with time, it was resolved. One of my favorite moments was an NPC moment where this was a lot of years ago, and it's actually on the trailer on the website a little bit, I think, is where I was playing a dwarven mecha, and it was about 4 in the morning, and it was on the stage before there was all the other stuff on the stage. It was just the stage plain, and some people didn't love it. It was very late, but I donned some full armor. I went full robotic movement mode, and there was this tough as nails, because nobody had exposed fight, that took quite a while, but it was just like a full moon, and it was like fall or spring, so there weren't many leaves yet, and so it was just like gorgeous, and there was just nothing super still except for these handful of ragtag adventurers that had stayed up late enough and gotten far enough into this dungeon to discover this fight. So it was a very special moment.
I think the latest we've ever stayed up for an event, also 4
Probably,
or 5 a.m.
Yeah.
It was 4. Hold on. One of my other favorite moments was because we had an island, and we had these people on the islands that were just always covered in poisons and diseases. And Mahogany, his first time, and we have this in video. We had to redo it on video, and we could do it for you. And it was these two, this tribal person with Mahogany on the field and whatever. And Mahogany is trying to negotiate. He's like, okay, we don't want to fight. And this whole time he's like, okay, you meet in the middle, we meet in the middle. We'll shake hands. I'll put down my weapon, you put down your weapon. And the person that was talking is like, I keep my weapon. We meet in the middle. And Mahogany's like, no, we won't do it. Long story short, this huge argument back and forth. Like, okay, we meet in the middle, no weapons. Okay. And they get to each other and they do this. Disease. And immediately the tribal guy runs away. And the Mahogany's like, weapon! I need a weapon! And it was by far my favorite video that we have.
Classic.
Oh, gosh, this is one of my favorite moments. It's just the funniest thing. You're just like, that's the one time you shake hands and you regret it. Try to be diplomatic. Okay.
Never shook a hand ever again.
He's been a jerk.
Or you at least make sure they wash their hands before they shake
Mm-hmm.
hands.
Yeah.
True.
COVID,
Yeah, all right. So, in the same exact vein, Aiden's question was actually a part 2.
Yes.
So,
There next.
what is your favorite moment from an event as a player?
Yeah. Okay. So I used to I had a dwarf character, Rafu, before I was my current character, and there was a lot of fun moments, I can say, but I think one of my favorite moments was when he died. Just because I know, I get it. You guys hated him. I get it. But I think it's just after investing, like Coleman was saying, after you invest in a character for so long and you progress it, and you're kind of staring at this character knowing it's about to die and be deceased, and it happened, and then the aftermath of what happened after his character had left the mortal his life. Probably that stint of time where I was dead was probably my favorite time as a player because I was so invested in it and I was so in the moment of like, wow, this is surreal. But it's just, yeah, that was probably my favorite, just seeing all of that.
Go this way.
Okay, cool. So I think mine is it's really funny because it didn't end up actually being a quest. It ended up being dinner time. And so Mahogany, which is the character that I play as a player, he is the noble of a noble house at the senior event. And we had decided all as a group that we were going to have a really big feast that Saturday night. And when I say big feast, I mean, I think we all made enough food for literally all of us. So we just had ridiculous, we made like pork chops, we had bacon stuff, there was apple roses, potatoes things, like it was so big. And then we had a pavilion set up and then had this long table, and it was like so good that other people that weren't part of House Ironwork came in and they're like, can I have some dinner? And we're like, join us, that's great. And there was like 2 or 3 people that were not part of that. And they had this like massive, epic, like huge town on fire, just absolutely destroying things battle between the 2 of them as this really big character moment happens. And I distinctly remember being in this little pavilion and then somebody describing noises and then describing a flaming cart rolling by. And for some reason, my brain was like, and then eventually we had to like go in the town and then kind of deal with the aftermath. But just that, like, it was like a 2-hour-long dinner and we were just vibing. It was great.
So
great.
All we heard Coleman say was, "Oh yeah, you hear like a bunch of crashing and like things on fire." Like,
Yeah, it was only Keller and I as GMs at that time, so we're just like, you guys gonna come out and stop this? No? Okay.
Just like we're just eating the food, potatoes.
Mine's like my favorite and least favorite. So I'm gonna answer someone else's question at the same time. As my past tense character, which I love to bring out one day again, Nom Nom McCoy. I was locked in a closet for 3 days because I had done something bad, and so they punished me by throwing me into the closet in the ship for 3 days. That was my least favorite because I've never had the most RP moments. I was just yelling about it. And the only person that fed me a fish was Archangel at that time. He was like sliding a fish underneath the door, and I'm like, thank you so much. Look at me. I was just the whole time.
Did we also had to like categorize a wound at one point? I think we had to.
So my favorite one going along with this was also the fact that at one point we fought the Kraken, and everyone on the ship died, and then finally Marcus. Marcus comes running, Kenny's character comes running down and opens the door. He's like, no, we need you. I'm like, just now you need me. And then we fight this Kraken, and we find out midway it's a magical Kraken that the Spellbinder could have been voiding his spells
The entire time.
and the whole time I look at him like, what? And he's like, I could void it that. I'm like, yes! And then I run back to the closet and close the door and lock it. And then Marcus had to fight the rest of the Kraken by himself. It's like my favorite part of the whole quest.
Amazing.
Alright, this is like this is year 1. Me and my buddy Jonathan, we're sitting on a bench, and we are plotting the downfall of the Baron. And that's it. That's the memory. It was great. I loved it. High quality.
Oh no!
just
I
casually.
backed that up because they were the most intimidating dudes. You guys had the cloaks on next to the fire. All we saw was like the Strider. Like all we saw was the nose down, and that's all we saw. And you guys went.
Yeah, we were super intimidating. He was a Fairlift, I was a Sinjoran. Watch out. It was great.
Let's see. Mine was there was a quest a long time ago about the Giern, a bunch of little body snatching crustaceans that tore through the fairy kingdom, which was like I think the first of the events that set them, I guess, into out of existence, basically. So yeah, and I was because my character at the time was Gabriel, who was a fairy, and so I actually got to be super invested in it, and Chase did a wonderful job of tying it into my backstory, and so like. It was a 2-part quest because we used to have to split quests in half during events because they would take that long. And so like the first half ended with me having to like defeat the dead body of one of my old childhood friends, which was hardcore. And then it was just a really cool story, just a neat creature and story to discover. And that's also what started the whole feud between Jades and fairies, which has blossomed into a terrifying, still going on event kind of as much as anything with the fairies is still going on because they're all gone. But yeah, that was one of those quests that when I remember it more as the detail of imagination rather than what actually happened. Also got an epic sword duel with Coleman because there's this little tiny child that came and played with us, one of the neighbor girls, and she did not understand anything except must beat people. And so Coleman just threw her at the rest of my party, and then I fought Coleman with great weapon on great weapon, and the rest of my 4 party members had to deal with this tiny child.
Yeah.
Couldn't die.
Who
That
would
was a good
randomly
fight.
yell 17, and I was like, oh no. Oh no, I don't know because there's so many good moments. There's so many, yes, oh. But the one I keep thinking of is the time when I accidentally left behind a very important artifact. And
What was the artifact?
Oh, am I allowed to say?
No, you can't.
I thought not. So yeah, I left. Well, in my defense, everyone was dead. It was the 3rd time we'd been there, so I was focused on trying to bring everyone else back because cleric babysitting duties. And I forgot it anyways, and everyone was upset with me, and still to this day. So hey, it's been 9 years.
We will never forget.
I think the best part was like, hey, okay, you're back. Where's the thing? And she's like, oh,
In my defense, another PC was there and didn't remind me.
Yeah, but it's your fault.
Yeah, I know.
Anyways, next question.
Okay. So next question comes from Rhiannon, and it is, what are the in-game mechanics for vampirism and wearism?
So it's actually relatively simple. There is, for vampires, they get rank 1 vanish, and they usually, depending on what exactly infected them, will probably get some kind of secondary ability for free that is dependent. And they uniquely refresh those abilities by normally resting or uniquely by feeding on something. And feeding also renews their HP. So that's vampirism, base normal vampirism. Wearism is quite a bit different. It is once you've gotten drained of most of your stats and things, you can turn into a werewolf, which will renew all of your health, give you a little bit of extra. You'll switch from using your normal weapon to using claw weapons, which can't be disarmed and come with all of the things that not using a normal weapon comes with. And then they will take a massive debuff after the fight unless they feed on something while they're transformed. So those are the 2 different styles of that thing.
Fabulous.
Thank you, Kelly.
So next question coming from our very own Zach. What is the worst, best ex machina you've ever had in game?
Ooh, that's a good one.
There's too many.
Okay, I'll have. This is kind of, I guess, a lot clumped into one. Just goblins.
Yes.
Just goblins, really. Obviously, as our healers, there's a reason that their name is just the screaming sounds of the dying.
Mm-hmm.
It's happened a lot. I have one very specific memory as of just a bunch of people with goblin masks just like giving people the people's elbow as healing because everyone is dead.
Yeah.
A specific one of my favorite ones was, I believe it was the event where it was the Draconin event. There were a bunch of very sad Draconins. And so there's a whole lot of traveling going on, and it was a pretty just dreary event in general. And I think it was the Acid Lakes that you ended up... That, because I know it was you leading Quest and some other people, and it was just this, like, had been a grind for a while. And so the goblins, a lot of them, or they have a bunch of teleporting orbs that they can use to get to just random places, and it usually puts them within, like, a certain radius of accuracy. And so they were, like, in the middle of these desolate acid wastes, and then a goblin just kind of like right next to Mahogany, and he just like fell to his knees in joy to see a goblin, and it was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, I'd say to go along with that as well, like most of the guild masters were just like, hey, because back I remember there were a few times where like, we need help, guild masters, help us with this thing, and so like just having them there was like.
That was amazing, but I also got killed with like 96 points of damage from the rain.
I think you were in his way. Well.
I just I wasn't aware.
I think if I was to put a face to Ex Machina in Claritas, it would have to be Bane.
Bane.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
okay, that's the answer.
Yeah. If you know, you know. He was a Wolfsbane that was a strong leader in Wiltshire, and that the adventurers used repeatedly to help them resolve many an issue.
It's still rumored he has prowess 5.
True.
I-
You
you
do
know-
rank powers?
No.
Alright,
Yeah.
so moving on.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, so you have a good answer. Okay, so our next question comes from Julie Roth. Question is, what is your favorite and least favorite event weather?
Yeah, start down the line.
The cold's my favorite. The only reason to why, and I will defend it now, is because you can always add on more layers. I don't do well in the heat, and when we had the one event that was like 100 something, and that was like the first 2 years that we did it. I remember all of our players after one quest going back to their tents and laying down underneath the tents and like, we don't want to do anything for a while. I'm like, well, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at that time we also had duct tape armor, so we were like cooking from the inside. But yeah, that winter.
So I really like cold events. I had a terrible experience very early on with cold events, and I got like maybe very mild hypothermia. I'm not sure, but beyond that point, I was like, I've decided to make my costumes focused on being warm, and so now if I'm at a winter event, I am never cold because I have so much warm costume stuff, and so I like it a lot. I think my favorite though is like if it's like not the ground's not covered in snow, but it's gently snowing. Like,
Yeah, I'd say to go along look-wise, winter events. They just look good visually in photography, in videos. It looks beautiful. Playing-wise, either October or November. It's like 50 degrees. It's a little chilly, but you can also wear some layers on costumes, which usually makes people look cooler with more layers on. So that's my least favorite is summer. I hate being hot. I like sweating.
Yeah. And also to go on that, like, I agree. Summer, I think, is the worst because so many of us, like, we have so many layers to our costume, so it's just like, we are dying now. But I would argue, especially with pictures, probably fall for me because before the leaves have fallen down, because it just really adds to the atmosphere so much more.
I love the heat. I do love summer. I mean, obviously, if it's like 100 and something out, that can be a lot. But I mean, if I could, I would just be like shirtless and in butterfly pants all of the time. That sounds so comfortable. My favorite, obviously, would be like sunny and 60 and very green. I love that. But I will admit, there has been one or two very magical moments of standing in the woods while it started to snow that are very aesthetic. So I can't disagree with that. But my favorite I sadistically enjoy bad weather, like snowy or cold, because afterwards you're like, that felt cool, that was hardcore. I just hate everything during it. So favorite event to play in is definitely just sunny and nice and warm.
If I'm doing a massive battle, it better be winter and there better be snow on the ground, because when I die I need to faceplant into the snow, which is always super nice.
I'm the only one that likes the warm.
So that's only for big front yard boss fight battles. In general, my favorite is fall because you get the beautiful colors. You get rogues trying to sneak around with a bunch of dead leaves on the ground, which is super funny. And it's also just the best weather. Like, it's super nice. And generally, I think fewer allergies for most people. So, like, in general, it's probably my favorite is fall.
Can we all agree, though? Front yard mud events, specifically. I don't know for you guys. For me, like, mud events in the front yard, big fights, ooh. So good, because afterwards you look and feel like you just accomplished something so big. I may be the only one. I'll shut up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Next question.
I'll leave.
So the next question comes from Alex Kaljuma. I hope I got that pronunciation correct.
Hey, Alex.
The question is, are you ever, or do you anticipate being scared to age up a character?
No. There was one that we were like, this will be interesting if they continue down the current path they are going down. But that has been muddied a little bit since, so not really, honestly.
He's doing really well.
I got better.
It's not Keenan. It's not Keenan. But no, and actually, I don't know that we've aged anyone up yet.
No.
Aside from, obviously, we have a couple that are officially aged up now, which is Kai and Jolly and James.
Duncan.
And Duncan. But yeah, so we haven't really had too many, but not really. If anything, it's just, this is going to be interesting. Go die.
Okay, we have a question from Hannah Rod Taylor. It is, can you bring babies to Claritas? Claritas. Asking for a friend.
Oh, okay.
The answer is absolutely. We strongly recommend not bringing the baby with you on a combative quest, due to the potential harm and safety of that here precious thing.
Claritas approves this message.
Alright, moving on. We have a question from Jackie White. It is, what tips do you all have for new players?
Ask questions. I thought we were all going to say it at once.
Ask questions.
Ask questions. There's no dumb questions. Even if it's the same question you've already asked and you need a reminder, ask questions. There is so much information happening. The second thing is, after asking questions and you still don't understand what's going on, which is probably going to happen, that's okay. Just be in the moment and enjoy it. Like, a lot of people I see like trying to like run numbers or like get the precise nature of a mechanic or a ability or whatever. Just like sit back a little bit and let other people kind of pull you along through the quests and stuff, and just try to absorb it and get the vibe of it and see if you like it. Because if you're sitting around thinking about numbers all day, it's not going to be fun because you're going to be doing math homework on the weekend. So
Yeah, I would say probably the least helpful thing you can do as a player is to just be quiet and not ask anything. Because like when you get there and you feel overwhelmed and you don't ask anything, then it wouldn't. Because that's why when I first started I didn't, and it sucked because I didn't know what was going on. And so asking questions is super helpful. So yes.
And I would also say we have a really good community that is really open to being like, hey, we got your back. Hey, I also have like some of it written down here for you.
Yes.
if you know anybody that's trying to be a new player, inviting them to the Facebook group and to the Discord. There are channels there to help new players get a little bit of pretext beforehand, which can be helpful, so it's not quite such a deluge of information all at once.
I would say, in general recommendations, I absolutely agree. Ask questions. Please ask more questions. Ask more and more questions. There's just a lot going on, and there is no expectation that you're going to be perfect at what you're doing your first, second, third, fourth, even fifth event. Like, it takes time to absorb this stuff, and so kind of like Keller said, I think it's really good to just like try to take a step back and go, okay, I'm going to enjoy what I'm doing. I'm going to enjoy smacking this guy, pretending to be a goblin. Like that is I've got to do that in the moment, and then it will start coming more naturally, and the plot points and the things about the world and whatnot you'll get as they come, and that's okay. And then the other thing is just like talk to, like, it doesn't have to be. Sometimes if you've got questions that aren't necessarily like mechanics questions or deep lore questions, things, we've got a whole community of people. Like, feel free to like get to know people. Mm-hmm. Like, it's easier to get involved and easier to kind of relax in a group of people if you've gotten to know them a little bit. So like, maybe you just really don't know what you're doing, and then you have to go to somebody and be like, hey, do you want me on this quest? Like, am I even going to be useful or anything? And that's okay to ask. Like, do that. We want you to be part of our community.
Awesome. Sounds like...
I do have one answer to go along with this. Stay hydrated. Drink a lot of water and Gatorade, and remember to eat when you can. Those are the two bigger ones. Is drink a lot of water. Hydrate. Self-care. Yeah. Just take care of yourself.
All right. Next question coming from Karis Griffith. If I got that correct. What or who is your favorite NPC to play?
All right. What or who is your favorite NPC to play? Let's probably just go down the line.
Yeah.
If you want to start coming.
Honestly, my favorite one has been to be able to play the Baron. At one of the feasts, I got to show his might and pin a very important character to a wall with a knife, and legit raise him up in character in front of all the players, and having them at the feast witness me pin this chase to the wall and then lift him up. It was just really cool to have all the just that cool. It was just it was a fun character to watch people interact with. I think it's probably one of many. That's one of my favorites.
Scariest experience of my life. It really was. I think my favorite NPC to play currently, I've got one that's kind of like up and coming. But I really, really like playing Drac. That's just... he's just great. I don't know. Like, he's great. I really enjoy playing him.
We like it when you play Drac.
Yeah.
We all do.
Keller, can I talk about the thing of power, or is that not
The thing of power?
the thing?
The thing of power.
The thing? I mean,
I feel like
Are you talking about?
I think if you have to be this vague, I'm
I'm
pretty
pretty-
sure
yeah.
you can't.
Probably
Yeah.
not.
never mind.
Enough.
It's just the
Moving
thing.
on.
Yeah. But wait, I introduced one NPC last event that was fun
Okay.
to play, but I can't. Yeah.
We're moving on.
Sorry, juniors, we're not spoiling anything yet.
Well, the thing I was talking about wasn't
Yeah,
last
yeah.
event.
Oh, okay.
But I
You
think,
had
yeah.
one job.
I mean, it's like
It's good.
it's
Does
fine.
the GM want to answer the question? Do you want to move on? Next question.
Oh, it's a shuffle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Akasha Lana one time.
Yeah,
Eggs.
that was fun.
Probably the most fun one that I remember actually getting to play was the end of Passel Bade. That fight was just very fun. Being a baby piglet with a greatsword and just rolling on the floor and destroying so many ankles was a great time. And then the actual boss fight, the part of that, because I, at least for one of the events, for one of them, I was the second one, so I got to see the faces of the people fighting as they just now realize this is a multi-stage fight. And there's just something very cathartic about like screaming my head off and chasing people down. It was a good time. That was just a good one.
You yell really loud.
Yeah.
Yeah. that was-
It has been a long week.
You're getting it all out.
My favorite is probably Thomas. If you're a rogue, you probably know Thomas. He's just a consistent little spot of sunshine at an event, and I just like being a happy guy sometimes instead of some various brooding thing that's trying to kill everybody. So that's nice. What a change.
It's just you.
What?
All right. So the next question is, what on-the-spot GM improvisation are you the most proud of? And this question comes from Nate, I believe. Chapman.
Yeah.
What on the spot GM improvisation are you most proud of? Thank you, Nate, for the question. Does anybody have anything that comes to mind immediately?
I've got one.
Great, go for it.
One. So speaking of earlier on, like the how much is planned versus how much is improv, and it's usually a mix. There are a lot of times where it's like, oh, there are a bunch of people that want to get like a task done, and so we try to find something that we've been wanting to do that we can make some of those tasks work. So a lot of those are initiation quests. There are a lot of times where it's like, oh, we can like make up a thing for somebody to go do that'll check off a lot of boxes for different peoples. And so there's one of those that ended up just working hilariously perfectly. And it was a myriad of, there's one fellow that was knocking down a tree with an axe, and that was one of his things, and then that tree happened to be the home of a bunch of squirrels, and so some diplomacy stuff was somebody else's thing, and we had a delightful moment of there's like a troll, a dwarf, and a squirrel doing diplomatic things, so seeing them pass a paper from like one to the other that would get it like this, and then like hand it to the troll, and the troll, like, it was just hilarious, because there was somebody chopping down a tree, this chaotic fight going on, people like talking about houses, because it was just this funny like whirlwind of things that worked together way too perfectly. And one of our players was a squirrel, so he was just like crying, trying to stop people from killing each other. It was just it was a chaotic moment that was just a lot of things that just worked way too well together. It was really fun.
It's like chaotically fun.
I'll go with one. I've got one I've been thinking of. So I can't remember the exact puzzle, but I distinctly remember there being that. So, as many of you know, I like dwarves. I like puzzles. I like number puzzles. I know.
Shocking.
And there was one of them in particular where somebody had gone to a mine and they had indicated that they were at the event before, and I will be honest, I had forgotten. And so I had to, like, on the fly in like 10 minutes come up with like a number puzzle that was complex enough for people to have to like, you know, like solve something and it not just be ridiculously easy. And for some reason I was enlightened for like 10 minutes and came up with something out of the blue without like the hours of research I normally do for that kind of thing, and ended up working out super well. I don't remember the specific one, but it was a dwarven mine puzzle. I remember that, and it was. I wish I was that productive all the time.
So did it make you feel like good or bad about yourself that you can come up with something so good in so short of time?
Well, it's both, you see. Because I'm like, you know, Chase, it'd be great if you could do this more than right now in panic time. But I'm also like, worst comes to worst, I could probably just make it up on the fly, right? And that's not how that works, though. So you know.
Not yet.
But yeah.
Cool. I've got a pretty brief one where it was an entire quest. It was long ago, I was taking basically all of the GM characters on a quest, plus a few other people, and they were going after an item, and basically everything was improv on that quest. I had some solid ideas for things, but I hadn't gotten anything on paper yet, so... But it ended up being a great quest, I think.
It
Yeah.
became one of my favorite ones. I was locked in the
All
closet
of
for
us
3 days.
All of us were on it.
Yeah, all three. Yeah, all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
we're missing
Kenny.
Kenny.
And
Kenny.
Oh, that's hilarious. Next question.
Alright, so our next question comes from Aiden McLaughlin, and it is, do you anticipate ever having fully in-game events with no game off? You eat and sleep in character.
Do we anticipate ever having fully in-game events with no game off, eating and sleeping in character the entire event?
The answer is, do you mean, are we ever going to go back to that? The answer is no.
People go
That's-
stir crazy when they can't get out of character for a little bit.
That's what happened to the zombie pandemic that we had in game.
It was real.
It was real.
It just ends up being harder than it's worth. People need a little bit of time to
Oh.
decompress their head.
yes.
Not only
And-
that, but go to the bathroom in garb is a pain. You're like, I gotta get all this off, and then someone's coming at you. You're just like, oh, to God. Not fun.
Cattail goes down the porta potty. It's just.
It gets claws.
I don't know if Bethany's watching.
Alright, so next question. As a GM, what is your favorite type of RP, roleplay, that you like to see from players?
Favorite type of role playing we like to see from players.
That's a. I think my best answer for that is pretty vague. I like seeing when people get a chance to be more their character than themselves. There's a lot of people, me being included, that it's easier to play a character that is very like you because that's just easier to maintain. But it's just each different for each person. But the situation where somebody can really vibe as what their character is and fit into that niche more than what their actual human person is, seeing that, be able to see that shift is really, really fun for me, and that's different for every player.
Yeah, to go along with that, I like when people think about things in game as their character, to go along with what Chris said. So if someone is their character and they see a problem or they see a conversation, that they are being their character and talking about it as their character would. It's just so interesting to see that. Knowing them as a real person and also knowing them as a character is even better, because you're like, oh wow, like, okay, you're actually in character now, and I love to see that.
I think. Oh, you good?
No,
Okay.
you can go first.
I think for me, I really like it when I can see people struggling. And let me clarify that a little bit. So I like it when you can see like a person's character, right? And you present them with some issue or difficulty or something, and they as a character and they as a person both struggle with whatever the thing is. And you get to watch them as a character and as a person both grow through whatever that issue is, or get destroyed. That happens sometimes, usually to the character, not to the person, but you know. But it's great when you see somebody have to overcome something that is against what they are normally used to being able to handle, both as a character and as a person. And when they have that like full on character moment, it's just beautiful and cool.
Do you have something, Chelsea?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I kind of enjoy more of the small and private, because sometimes it is harder for me to like do a lot of stuff in front of a lot of people, and sometimes I do see that there is a lot more characterization when there is just maybe like 3 in the room. Like I remember there was this one point where it was just like a house decision that we all decided that Gabriel had to die, and that was just such a big, powerful moment, and it was so much easier just having it just the 5 of us.
Yeah, I will say that's probably one of my favorite RP moments as a player as well, because it was so intimate and we all knew each other, and we were all acting as our characters, not as our real life avatars.
Wonderful. So the next question comes from Alice Hampton, and it is, what is your favorite moment in an open field type battle?
All right, Coleman.
I got one. Mine was it was during the War of the Undead, and I was a giant troll. My favorite moment was I had a player, Hayden Morgan. At one point, I was battling, taking these giant strides, and I was going uphill, and I saw Hayden, kind of the nice little scrouch. He was a rogue at the time, dual wielding knives, and I'm like, do it. I didn't know what he was doing, but I'm like, do it. And I lifted up my foot, I'm like, very slow, very dramatic, and he ran at me, slid on his shin knees, and did like a little arch back thing, and slid underneath my legs, and slit both of my calves with his knives. And I was like, I'm gonna go down. This is way too epic to not go down this way. He slid down the hill, slid my ankles. I fell over. It was very dramatic, and then he came around and stabbed me in the back of the neck. That was one of my favorite front yard battles I've ever had.
One comes to mind. We were doing a front yard fight with a group of vampire guards, and Chase was one of them. And there was about, I want to say, 25 players on the field and 4 NPCs, the GMs. And Chase ran out in the middle, and as loud as he could, he called a challenge rank 3, which is everyone in the encounter will now go to Chase. And everyone stopped, turned around, looked at Chase, and ran at him. And seeing the realization on Chase's face of like, oh no, and he like crouched down and put his shield over his head, and it was just the most joyous I've ever felt.
Mine was gonna be that same one because it was amazing, and particularly when he was done, he ended with a massive thunderstorm, so everybody had to fall away. So seeing Chase like stand up with a great shield as 20 people just like fell away from him was just one of the most awe-inspiring moments of my life.
I must admit that when I did this, I like called them in, saw everybody rushing towards me, which if 25 people all completely surrounding you start running towards you, it's just unsettling, you know? And so I hunkered down there, and I was a paladin, so of course I immediately start doing calculus. And so I'm doing calculus, and then at some point my brain's just like on fire, right? It's like overheating, and so I was like, I need a little break. And so I used the thunder stomp, and I stood up, and my brain was just like still like catching up. Like the wheels were spinning, and I had like lost grip in my brain, you know? And so when I stood up in this like epic pose, watching people fall in like rings around me, I was actually just like,
Stretching.
and then I had to go back into the same thing again.
So good.
Did you have one, Chelsea?
Probably the most recent, like, Passel Bade event. That was really good because there was just so many different waves going on, and you didn't really fully know what was going on. It was just really awesome, and it was the most I have ever healed at a time. And I was just like, okay, just go, go. You need arrows? Here we go. Go.
Yeah, I think mine was probably, Chris kind of mentioned it earlier, the Passel Bade fight after the first, once people realized that a GM was coming to take places with the other GM, and all you just saw the just like, there it is. That's what I wanted.
I missed that fight, but I'd like to imagine, like, as a player, you probably thought, oh, we're done.
Man. I'm so close to the end of my spells.
Yes, good question, thank you.
Did you go?
I went.
So the next question comes from Karis Griffith.
Nope.
Griffith. And it is, can you settle the debate? Who makes better or worse decisions?
Oh.
The juniors or the seniors?
Okay,
Actually,
yeah.
I was going to skip around it, but we could actually. Yeah. Oh, sorry, what was the question? Sorry, say again.
Can you settle the debate? Who makes better or worse choices? The juniors or the seniors?
We could. Next question.
I'll say both and neither.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Honestly.
From Brady McLaughlin, will you ever post a list of teasers for techniques so people can find out about things they could look for?
Ooh. You
Will
naughty.
Will you ever post a list of teasers for techniques so people can find out about things they could look for? So techniques being modifiers to existing talents that you already have. We used to be super secretive with literally everything. You used to not be able to find out what rank 3s were until you were able to get them and stuff. So we've taken a lot of bounds into expanding what information players have access to before they are able to gain it. It's hard to say definitively if we will give a set list of things that are going to be available or not, because that's one of those areas where it can be really cool to in character discover something that you couldn't have just looked up on a document somewhere 3 months ago. But on the other hand, choosing between a paladin or a knight, 2 different styles of like tank fighters, you might end up wanting to choose one over the other if you knew some of the techniques they might have access to, and we really want you to go forward and with confidence that you're picking the type of playstyle you want. So that does kind of incentivize us to kind of do that. So I'm going to give you a very vague, it might be nice.
We could.
All right. So as we're winding down with very few time left, who writes the story and how planned out is it? And then beyond that, do you know what the future of Claritas will actually look like?
I'd say, I mean, it's it goes in levels. We have relatively far out planned to a very basic level. We know of major things that are happening in the world that need to resolve some way, and it's kind of like with quest planning. A lot of the planning is just what is going on in the world, and then let that play out. So to a vague extent, we have a decent amount planned as we know the direction things are going, and we know major events that are happening. And then as we get closer to those, we flesh them out a little bit because we know the smaller things that have now happened that are kind of affecting them, but to an equal extent, people can always change the direction of things. So it's kind of this, like, the farther out you get, the vaguer it gets, but there is a rough blocking out until maybe something changes, and then that's usually enough time. So half and half, like, it's some or the other.
To answer who writes the story, we write the story. That's yeah.
We always hear about, like, who's doing this or what that, and there's a lot of us have storylines that we are, like, proud of or kind of putting into, but everybody still has a say in some of them, and so many times those storylines will interact with something that somebody else is doing, so it really is a combination of all of our brains, which is a terrifying thing.
I got input with Pass All Bait stuff, the Trinkets and Thieves. That was a collaboration between most of the GMs, but, like, had a couple spearheading it, but, like, in general, even if it's somebody's event, it's not only written by that person. So we're still collaborating on most everything.
What's the time though?
Yep.
Well, we're out of time, so.
Man.
So, well, I'd like to thank you guys so much for spending the time with us and everything. It's truly a blessing. We look forward to seeing all you guys again. I mean, honestly, this was fun. I hope you enjoyed this.
Yes.
I feel like it went by like that.
It
Alright,
did go
you know?
fast.
It went by really quick.
Honestly, let us know how you felt. This is something I think we'd all be down to do a little more regularly every once in a while, so thank you all for watching.
Toodles.
Stay safe, toodles.
Toodles.
Love you guys. Goodbye.
Love you.
Goodbye.
Just gonna wait patiently.
Wait awkwardly.
Take a
until the
pose.
video ends.
Take a pose.